Welcome back to my channel, and another solved Welsh true crime video. Today I am covering the case of the brutal murder of 19-year-old Joanne Tregembo by her ex-boyfriend, Adam Campbell Fury, in 1995. This will be a short video, because the case was quite straightforward, and there isn't a great deal of information available. Before I begin, I would like to say that I mean no offense at all to anyone involved in the case. The information I am using comes from several sources, including the Crown Court transcript. I have put all of this information together into this one video. The murder happened in the Fforestfach area, which is in the north of Swansea. Joanne Tregembo was born on the 24th of March 1976, to mother Gaynor Tregembo and father Paul Tregembo, who were both working as technicians at Swansea University. They lived in Gorseinon, which is just outside of Swansea. Joanne had one sister named Caroline. After Joanne had left school, she started working as a travel agent clerk. Joanne met ex-soldier Adam Fury, who was 20. Adam had joined the army when he left school, and once he had completed his basic training, he joined the Royal Welsh Fusiliers, where he underwent further training at their barracks at Whittington in Staffordshire. He had left the army after suffering physical and mental abuse, and also sexual assault by senior officers. He had also been the victim of bullying throughout his school life, and his father had died when he was still quite young. He and Joanne had started a relationship together. Everything seemed to be going well and they were happy together. They had lived together intermittently at his home in Fforestfach for several months. However, he quickly became infatuated by her, and became very possessive. Adam had a reputation of being quite a violent and aggressive individual. Joanne had left him after she had experienced the full force of his anger, and he had been violent to her on several occasions. Joanne then returned to live at her parents' home. Adam was not happy with this at all. Adam was not only abusive to Joanne, but to other members of her family also. Numerous members of Joanne's family had reported him to the police, and gave statements complaining about his harassing and threatening behavior towards them. This behavior had continued for a period of time after Joanne had left him. As a result of these complaints, criminal proceedings in the magistrates' court were brought against him, and these were still pending at the time of Joanne's murder. Joanne had also given the police a statement about the violence she suffered from him. It was clear that he was obsessed with Joanne, but he had strong feelings of anger and hatred towards her, over the way he considered that he had been treated by her and her family. He believed that he had done nothing wrong. On May 6, 1995, Joanne had gone on a night out with her friends in Swansea. It was during this night that she had a chance encounter with her ex-boyfriend Adam, at a nightclub in the centre of Swansea. They had both been drinking. At some point during the night out, Adam kidnapped Joanne, and she was taken against her will to his home in Fforestfach. It was whilst she was at his home that they had sexual intercourse together. There was conflicting evidence given as to whether this was consensual or forced. After it had taken place, Adam, clearly still angry about the statements made against him to police, he questioned Joanne about the statement she had given him, about him being violent to her. A copy of this statement was found at the scene covered in her blood. He then launched a frenzied and brutally sustained hour-long attack on her. He stabbed her 30 times, but she was still conscious. Whilst smothering her screams with a duvet, he then beat her around the head 3 times with a hammer, causing fatal injuries resulting in Joanne's death. He then dragged Joanne's lifeless body to his car parked outside his house, which was on a major road that was used by thousands of motorists to enter and leave Swansea from the west. He put her blood-soaked body into the boot of his car. He then added another insult by rifling through Joanne's heavily blood-stained purse to find money for petrol for the journey. He then drove her body to one of the Gower Peninsula's best-known beauty spots at Oxwich Bay. The journey would have taken around 30 minutes. Here he dragged Joanne's body out of his car, and then unceremoniously dumped her body in the woodlands, where he hoped that she would remain hidden. He thought it had been the perfect location, but the woodlands were frequently used by locals and visitors. Dog owners took their dogs there, so it would only be a matter of time before she was discovered. Police quickly learnt of Joanne's disappearance when her parents had reported her missing. They were all concerned for her safety because they knew everything that Adam had done to Joanne and her family. From day one, Adam was the prime suspect. After hearing that the police were looking for Joanne, after a few days, Adam handed himself in to the police. He then took them to the location of Joanne's disfigured body. When interviewed by police, Adam told him that he and Joanne had entered into a suicide pact, but did not say how they had planned to carry it out. He said that when she had changed her mind, he became very angry. He claimed that the murder was not premeditated and that he had acted on the spur of the moment. He stated that he had only stabbed Joanne twice, pursuant to a suicide pact, and those injuries had not resulted in her death. He told police that the other stab wounds and hammer blows were caused by another person that was at his house at the time of the murder, and that the other person was acting under the influence of hallucinogenic drugs. This alleged attacker was never identified. There were also multiple cuts to Joanne's clothing, but these had not happened as a result of the stabbing to her body. This attack was clearly about more than just wanting to kill her. It seemed as though she may have been tortured. The police had spoken to people who knew Adam, and they quickly learned that Adam had told him that he intended to kill Joanne. Police found Joanne's blood in the boot of his car, and also found clothing that belonged to him with traces of Joanne's blood on them. There was no evidence that anyone else had been involved in the murder. As I said, Joanne's blood-stained statement was found at Adam's house. Police charged Adam with the murder of Joanne, and in June 1996 he was put on trial at Cardiff Crown Court. A psychiatric report was compiled on behalf of Adam's defense lawyers by Dr. Elizabeth Richardson, dated the 9th of November 1995, but it was not introduced as evidence at the trial. The report describes him as having suffered a disturbed childhood with bullying at school, and a history of depressive illness. He claimed that he had made a serious suicide attempt whilst Joanne was living with him, and claims to have made other suicide attempts throughout his life. The doctor went on to explain that at that time she assessed him, she believed that his temperament made him a serious potential risk to others and to himself. She went on to say that when he is upset, he is capable of unrestrained violence, and that it is impossible to know how his character will develop, and that she believes that it is likely to be a very long time before he ceases to be a risk to the public. All throughout the trial he made it clear to Joanne's family that he felt absolutely no remorse for killing Joanne. He had made sneering remarks to them, and was described as trying to intimidate them from the dock by making eye contact and other such displays. He was unanimously found guilty by the jury on June 14, 1996. In sentencing Adam Fury, the judge said to him, "The suffering and fear which Joanne must have felt is almost beyond imagination. In an evil and macabre way, you gained satisfaction from terrorizing and killing her. What you did was evil beyond words. You were capable of extreme violence but without a sense of conscience." He was sentenced to life imprisonment, and ordered to serve a minimum of 15 years before he could apply for parole. As was being led out of court to be taken to the cells, he shouted to Joanne's parents, "Easy." It was taken as a sign that he thought he would be able to withstand a life sentence with no problem at all, and that he did not care about his fate. Joanne's mum was forced to give up her job at Swansea University because of the trauma and stress she had suffered over the loss of her beautiful daughter Joanne. Speaking to a journalist several years later in 2012, she was still suffering, and was finding it very hard to live her life without Joanne. She expressed that she found it hard seeing her friends' children growing up and living their lives. She told them, "You can go on putting on a brave face at work and come home crying in the car, but you can't do it forever." She described the immense hole that had been left in their lives, and when birthdays, Mother's Day and Christmas came around, they were left feeling that there was always someone missing. The couple have another daughter, Caroline, who is still so affected by the loss of Joanne, that she is unable to talk about her. Adam Fury later appealed against his conviction, saying that it was a suicide pact gone wrong, and asking for his conviction to be reduced to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. He also asked for a review over the minimum term he needed to serve, before being eligible for parole. His case was heard at the Court of Appeal in London on the 4th of April 2007. In support of his appeal, Adam Fury pointed out his age at the time of the offence, and stated that he had made exceptional progress whilst in custody. He also stated that the attack on Joanne was not premeditated. Although he said this, there was still no evidence that he felt any remorse at all for what he had done. He accepted that an aggravating feature was the attempt made to conceal Joanne's body, and that she was moved from the place where she was killed. Another consultant psychiatrist completed a report to consider the effects of the bullying and sexual abuse he had encountered during his basic training, whilst in the army, as well as the difficulties he had suffered during childhood, including the death of his father. With the result that the consultant psychiatrist considered that Adam Fury was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and had substance abuse or dependence at the time of the murder of Joanne. The judge dismissed his case, and the 15-year minimum sentence remained. In summing up, the presiding judge said, if in many years anyone considers his release, they should read the transcript of the trial very carefully, as I consider this man to be a danger to the public. From his prison cell, Adam Fury launched a lawsuit for compensation against the Ministry of Defence. He claims that had suffered from assaults and sexual assault during the time he spent in the army, particularly at the Royal Welsh Fusiliers training barracks at Whittington in Staffordshire. If his claim was successful, he would have received thousands of pounds in compensation. Gaynor and Paul Tregembo heard of his claim, and as a result, they lodged a civil case against Adam Fury for compensation for their suffering, and wanting justice for Joanne. They believed that he did not deserve to be financially well off, after the horrific crime he had committed. Their claim was successful, and they were awarded £10,000. This left Adam Fury bankrupt. Now that he was bankrupt, this meant that he was not eligible for legal aid. Therefore, he was unable to pay the costs of the case, and so he had no choice but to give up the claim. In 2012, Adam Fury was moved to an open prison prior to his parole hearings for release. Upon hearing this, Gaynor and Paul Tregembo started to campaign against his release. They received backing from many of the local politicians. The Tregembos were petitioning for Adam Fury to serve at least 25 years of his life sentence. They wrote a letter to the Ministry of Justice which is as follows: on May 6, 1995, our daughter Joanne was brutally murdered by Adam Campbell Fury. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in Cardiff Crown Court on June 14, 1996, to serve a minimum of 15 years. This was a horrific attack which was premeditated, prolonged and callous in the extreme. We have been informed that he has recently been transferred to an open prison, which means days out of jail, first accompanied, then alone. The next step is release. We would like to point out that in recent years sentencing has increased dramatically, and if this came to court today, he would have undoubtedly been sentenced to serve at least 25 years. Although he has now served over 17 years, when he was sentenced, the presiding judge said, if in many years anyone considers his release, they should read the transcript of the trial very carefully, as I consider this man to be a danger to the public. As this video is 25 years since the murder, he is now likely to have been released from prison, but I have been unable to confirm this. I have also been unable to find the outcome of the Tregembos' campaign to keep him in prison. Other former soldiers have successfully sued the Ministry of Defence for the same abuse and assault that Adam had complained of, and they have received payouts in compensation. The Tregembos are now at the forefront of a campaign aimed at raising the profile of crime victims and their families and winning more funding and recognition for them. They say that criminals receive much more support and financial help than the victims and their families receive, even though they have to bear the scars for their entire lives. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. If you like true crime videos, then please subscribe to my channel to be notified every time I upload new content. In the next few weeks, I plan on creating more videos related to murders in the Swansea area. Because I'm from Swansea, these are quite close to me, and I feel I owe it to the victims and their families to tell their stories. I'd also love to hear your thoughts on this case in the comments section below. Please remember to be respectful to the memory of Joanne Tregembo, and the feelings of her loved ones. I will see you on another video. Thank you for watching.